Hey there. Today I wanted to share my thoughts on the differences between a mirrorless camera and a cinema camera. Now, there's really a lot of good sites and resources out there that you can learn from the professionals, the people that shoot on mirrorless cameras, the people that shoot on cinema cameras, people that do this as a profession. I do not. I'm a hobbyist. I started out in photography. I just took some pictures more as a hobby. I did a wedding, shot some headshots for people, and then I moved on to doing corporate head, talking head videos, and I use what I'm using right now to record this, which is the Fuji X-T3. That's been my workhorse for many years. And then as I grew in my skill sets, I started moving into and desiring to do more cinematography. So let's talk about the difference between YouTube videos and cinematography. Videos simply is running around with a camera and just shooting whatever you can and then making something out of it. That's like a vlog. It's kind of like this right now. I'm making a video. It's not cinematography. It's not planned out. I'm simply just taking my camera, talking to it. I'll do some edits, tell a story in a sense, and then I'm done. With cinematography, you're going to be moving up into bigger equipment that you can control and kind of create a very precise thing. Back there, I got my little white space there I can draw on and kind of create a storyboard. If I were to do a cinema movie, I would start with a script, storyboard it, kind of create your shot list, and everything is done in a controlled environment. And you're going to repeat shots over and over and over until you continue to get that perfect shot. And you take all those perfect pieces and you put it together. Why am I talking about this? I'm not a cinematographer. I've never made a movie before. I have aspirations to create one for myself to tell my own personal story. And I wanted to share it from a perspective of someone that's not a professional. Now, let's start with just a photography camera. This is my Fuji X100V. I love this one. It's a mirrorless camera. It's small. It takes video. Can do 4K video, but for the most part, it's really designed around photography, taking still images, a photo, if you will. I can't show you my X-T3 because I'm using it to record this right now, but for purposes of this video, I'm going to show you just my GH5 Mark II. So this is the GH5 Mark II. It's a micro four thirds camera. It has in-body image stabilization, which means inside this body here, the sensor will move around to try to remove some of that jitter. The lens has optical image stabilization. So again, what that means is the lens floats and it moves ever so slightly to kind of get those jitters. It's not going to get handshake. It'll get just those micro tiny jitters and try to eliminate some of that. This is a photography lens, which does video. It's a 12 to 60 millimeter. So the equivalent of 24 to 120 in full frame. Now, if you're new to the space, and I think it was really confusing for me, this whole conversion from APS-C, which is that one, or a crop sensor, to micro four thirds to full frame. So let's do a little history. Back in the day, we shot film in 35 millimeter. That became the standard that we call it now full frame. We just arbitrarily picked it. It could be anything you want. And so full frame is kind of known as the standard, and then you can do conversions to get the equivalent. Now, a lot of you in the comments will probably correct me, and I'm sure I will link to a couple Gerald Undone videos where it's going to be explained technically correct. But I think for the lay person, generally, with a smaller lens sensor, you're going to have to adjust the length or how far it. So this 12 millimeter lens actually is the equivalent of 24. And so it just helps you to find conversion points. This cinema camera is APS-C, so it's a crop sensor, Super 35 lens, different crop factor. It's all this math that you got to figure out. Let's ignore that for now, and we'll get back to it. So what's the difference between photography and starting to move into cinema? I'll compare these two lenses. This lens is a zoom lens. It has zoom. It has a focus by wire. What that means is when I rotate the focus ring right here, it's sending a digital signal to the camera to then move the lens mechanically inside here. So I'm not doing anything when I rotate this. It's sending a signal, and then the camera is doing it. And so there's a computer layer there. Now the downside of that is there's a lag, there's a delay, and you actually don't have hands-on direct control. With cinema cameras, this is a smaller one. This is an anamorphic Vazen 28 millimeter camera lens. There's an aperture lens ring right here that controls how wide or how narrow the focus, the aperture is. Kind of that when you're looking through it like that. And then there's my focus wheel right here, and it's mechanical. So when I move this with my hands, the lens is actually moving back and forth because of this. And why that matters is it gives you direct control. And I think what I learned is as I'm moving into cinema, people want full control of everything. They don't want a computer deciding how to do things, and they want full control because again, you're operating in controlled environments. The downside is if you are using a cinema camera to, for example, capture my moving child, it is incredibly hard because I don't have a film crew. I'm a one-person show. My kid doesn't sit still, and I can't get my kids to do the same thing over and over. So I get one shot. And so usually if I'm doing videos of my kids, I'll use something that's just fully automatic, helps me, intervenes, and there's a little computer element in there to help me not get the shakiness, and also just I only get one shot at it, which is why sometimes I'll actually use iPhone as my primary for capturing kids. So we then move up from this, what we used to call DSLR, and now it's mirrorless cameras, the typical cameras that you're used to. You're going to move into the cinema world. This is questionably entry level. You can argue forever. This is a Z-Cam E2S6. It looks ginormous and huge, but inside is simply this little box here. It is just, when you buy the camera, it's just a sensor inside the brain with a little processor, and that's it. So this little box right here, you then have to put all these parts and components. You have to put your own battery into it. You have to put your own monitor. It doesn't come with a monitor, a handle so you can actually hold the thing. These handles. This camera has a built-in hand grip with buttons and everything. This one doesn't. I had to buy the grip separately. I had to buy the handle separately. I had to buy the monitor separately. The reason being is if in your cinematography, you have very specific tight tolerances on specs on how you're going to do the shoot. And whoever's doing the video work, they want to control and customize for that exact scenario. This isn't all one size fits all, right? So if I'm trying to use this for a certain scenario, it might be too light, it might be too heavy, it might be whatever, but that's it. That's it. That's all I get. In this rig right here, I have it currently rigged up fairly large for handheld shooting, and it's heavy. Heavier the camera, the less shaking you're going to get. But then I also can take this entire rig apart, put on my gimbal. I can take this rig completely apart, make it even smaller, and hold it handheld for tight shots where I'm in tight, confined spaces. Or I can even rig it out even bigger. It gives me lots of options. Now, I'm going to end this video a little bit further with just kind of my move into anamorphic lenses. This lens is huge, the 40mm T2 by Vazen. And with anamorphic, what it does is it takes the image. So imagine when you're watching movies on the big screen, the image is really, really wide. It takes a wide image and it compresses it down into your sensor size. Later on, when I'm doing the editing, I stretch it back out, which kind of creates some unique, interesting characteristics. I moved into the anamorphic space because I wanted to differentiate myself a little bit. This lens right here is the Fuji X-T3. I'm shooting it. It's a 16mm f1.4. So it's a fairly fast lens, but it's a circular lens. It shoots just like any other traditional lens. And so when I move into these types of lenses, it creates a unique look, which I think not everyone on YouTube is shooting with. And so if you want to differentiate yourself, and that I do, I end up investing in two of these lenses. I have the 28mm and the 40mm. It's all relative, of course. They're incredibly expensive compared to my lenses like this one, and they're incredibly cheap if you compare them to cinema anamorphic lenses. So again, in the future, I'll be sharing a little bit more on anamorphic, and the reason why I switched away from Fuji a little bit, because one, I still like my Fuji. I kept a couple lenses. It's going to be my bare photography kit mostly, and sometimes using it in this scenario where I need a video camera. This is my A camera, the Z-Cam. It's with this anamorphic lens, and I ended up investing in a GH5 as my B cam. The reason I didn't get a second Z-Cam is because these cinema cameras require a lot of effort, and it's not really designed for a one-person show, and I am a one-person show. And especially if I'm running out and about, having a giant rig like this just doesn't work. Something like this is an incredibly small kit. So I have in-body image stabilization, can get rid of some of those handheld shakes, and a really awesome anamorphic lens. Now, in the future, I'll be sharing a little bit more on the limitations and the pain of shooting with anamorphic, namely of which is the minimum focusing distance is 2.7 feet. So I gotta be close to almost 3 feet away from my subject. And the only way to get closer is to use things called diopters, which I'll get to in a little bit later, but complicated. So bottom line is, as you progress from cinema cameras to mirrorless cameras and into your phone, I think there's a place for all. You kind of have to choose where you want to play. Right now, I'm playing them in all the spaces. But if you go full cinema cameras, and I've seen lots of people like myself interested in kind of getting rid of all their regular cameras and going to cinema, there is a huge downside in going this space because This is not something you just turn on and shoot. It takes a lot of setup time versus something like this is kind of that middle ground. Doesn't have kind of the versatility of this, but also kind of gets me closer. And if I really just want to enjoy life at the end of the day, I want to just have a small light camera to be with me so I can take some image, maybe shoot some video and call it a day. And if I really want to be minimalistic and get away from everything, my phone is good enough. I shot my last vacation with mostly my phone. Where I'm going to be heading next is doing more of those controlled shoots, investing some of my time in cinema work. And that work is going to take a long runway. But in the interim, I need solutions to kind of do things like this, where I want to do a quick video. Let me know if you have any questions. I know I went a little sporadic all over the place in this space here, but if you're interested in this, let me know and I'll continue to make more of it. I'd like to get into a little bit more detail with the Z-Cam, especially with these two anamorphic lenses. I think there are quite a bit of good shooters out there making really awesome stuff. But the question is there a space for an anamorphic lens in your life? I don't know. I'll see you soon.